Hi, welcome back to the Fastball Profits. Thanks for joining me tonight. This is our Week 5 waiver wire video. It's Sunday night. Week 4 is basically done. I want to thank you guys that have watched, subscribed, share our videos. I'd love to do Q&A with you guys as much as we can do that. So it's Week 4 is basically finished, and we're looking at waiver wire for the upcoming week. Now, maybe you're looking to pick a guy up because of the lack of production, or you just want to put bigger players on your bench, or keep them off another team's bench, or maybe you're looking at filling for buys. This week on buy, we got Chicago and Tampa Bay. Now, one of the things that we always mention whenever we get into our waiver wire video, because we heard some questions last year, was why don't you give us names that are 95% available? Why do you mention names that are maybe 20, 25, or 30% available? And here's why we do that. Guys that are widely available are just not guys that you can trust necessarily. Yes, every once in a while you can roll the dice. If you dig deep, you can always find a diamond in the rough. But we'd rather give you 5 or 6 players at each position that are about 20 to 30% available that you can trust will be productive for you. And so that's why we take that approach. The other thing we always say in our videos, you need to contextualize this information. There's so many different leagues out there. There's different scoring systems, league size, benches, things like that. That's really hard for us to do it, so you need to take this and flex that into your league. Concerns tonight, we saw Tyler Eifert went down with an ugly ankle injury. That looked nasty. We're praying the best for him. Gronkowski left with an ankle injury. He didn't return, although I think the reason why he didn't return is they were blowing out Miami and he didn't need to come back in that game. Leonard Fournette aggravated his hamstring injury and left again, so that's a concern. But before we actually get into our players that we think you should look at if you're looking to pick somebody up this week, I want to talk about a place that we're partnershiping with out there called Thrive Fantasy. They're basically a take on the daily fantasy game that's out there, but it's not like anything that I've ever seen. If you played daily fantasy before, I would encourage you to check it out. It's fun, it's easy, and this one's even more user-friendly than I've seen any other sites. It is a total different twist on the game. So if you click on the link below, just go ahead and check it out. They'll match your first money for free. Once again, we're partnershiping with Thrive Fantasy. They've got a good product out there. We think you should check it out. Let's get to the quarterbacks for this week that you should consider. So the first one I want to talk about is Jared Goff. Now, he's only 11% available out there, but here's why I'm going to talk about this guy, even though he's probably not available in your league. It's just surprising that he's 11% available. He shouldn't be available in any league. He should be picked up in all leagues. This guy is seriously good. Now, before last week, he's had some good games, but he hasn't had great games. But here's the reason why. The first 3 weeks, they blew everybody out. It wasn't until week 4 that the Vikings actually put points on the board, stayed in the game long enough where Jared Goff had to throw the ball, and when he did, this guy just blew up. He's incredibly good. If you look at every week, his numbers and his quarterback rating have improved. He's got 3 very good wide receivers and a great running back, a good offensive line. This guy, every week, is going to be a top 5 to 10 quarterback play. And so if you happen to be lucky enough to be in a league where he's 11% available, you need to pick this guy up. He's seriously good. So if you're looking at streaming a guy this week, once again, maybe your quarterback's got a tough matchup, maybe he's on a bye, maybe he's injured. The guy that I think you should probably check out that's probably out there for you is Blake Bortles. I'm not a Blake Bortles fan, but this week I am. He's 68% available playing Kansas City. And this is one you need to stream. Kansas City gives up the second most points to quarterbacks. Now, if you look at Blake this year, he's had 2 good games, he's had 2 bad games. In the bad games, he's averaged 166 passing yards per game and a half a touchdown per game, not good at all. But his good games, he's averaged 382 passing yards per game and 3 touchdown passes per game. And a lot of his plays dictated on, like we saw last year, he had a stretch of 4 games that he was phenomenal against bad pass defense. Well, Kansas City has a very bad pass defense, so this is a good play this week for you. You got to pick up Blake Bortles and play him. I've got a league where I've been streaming quarterbacks, and he'll probably be my play this week. Another guy I want to talk about out there is Jameis Winston, 89% available. Now, he isn't a bye this week. The Fitz magic was fun to watch, but it looks like the clock struck midnight with him there. He had 3 interceptions versus Steelers. He comes out today. He really struggled. And then he had 3 games in a row where he threw over 400 yards, but it was against very bad pass defenses, New Orleans and Pittsburgh, and both of those pass defenses aren't very good. And if we're just being honest and real, as much as Fitzpatrick is a nice guy, you like to see him succeed and do well. In the preseason, Winston looked a lot better. Last year, Winston looked a lot better. And really, he's the future of this franchise at this point. And so I think that coming out of this bye, he's probably going to get the start. I could be wrong. They might get Fitzpatrick one more start there. I think that'd be a mistake. I think it's time for them to make that change now. And so keep an eye on that. He's a guy that you need to consider. I love this guy for a lot of reasons. One, they got great weapons around him. They've got 3 good wide receivers, good tight ends. They've got solid weapons. But here's why I love him so much. That Tampa Bay defense is brutal. I want to give you some defensive statistics on Tampa Bay. So their defense in 4 games has allowed 370 passing yards per game. They're allowing 3.25 passing touchdowns per game. They're allowing 35 points for quarterbacks in fantasy per game, and that includes quarterbacks like Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. That hurts. And then that defense is allowing 37 points per game defensively. That defense is bad, and what that tells me is that whoever's quarterbacking that team, whether it happens to be Fitzpatrick or whether it turns out to be Winston, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot to stay in games. So I like him as a guy moving forward. In fact, he's a guy that I kind of kept my eye on in a league where I decided to stream quarterbacks. I think I'm going to use him. And I want to talk about Mitch Trubisky. He had a huge game today, just blew up. So how do we assess that? So here's how I assess that. I think it's definitely progress for Mr. Trubisky. Obviously, that's a huge step forward from the right direction. But I think today's game was probably more of an indication of how bad Tampa Bay's defense is rather than how good of a quarterback he's going to be in fantasy. You look at Tampa Bay, they faced Ben Roethlisberger. They gave up 353 passing yards and 3 TDs. Against Drew Brees, they gave up 439 yards and 3 TDs. Against a bad Nick Foles, they gave up 334 yards and a TD. And against Mitch today, 354 yards and 6 TDs. I think Mitch Trubisky is making progress. Obviously, he's got some good weapons there. But today's game was an indication of not necessarily how good he is, but how bad Tampa is. So please don't be that owner out there that thinks from this point moving forward, Mitch Trubisky is going to be your quarterback the rest of the season. That would be a big mistake to make. Another guy out there maybe you should consider is Andrew Luck. So Andrew Luck is about 20% available in leagues. He's playing New England. He had a nice game today. He passed for 464 yards. He had 4 TDs. And now he plays New England that before this week wasn't very good against the pass. I think that's going to be a higher scoring game there. I think that he's a nice play. And another reason why I like Andrew Luck is their defense isn't particularly good and they can't run the ball for anything. And that basically leaves him having to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. Another solid consideration this week would be Alex Smith of Washington. He's playing New Orleans. New Orleans allows the most points to quarterbacks heading into week 4. So that New Orleans defense is not very good there. And so Alex Smith has got a sweet matchup there. Another guy out there that's probably available in your league you could look at is Andy Dalton. He's about 40% available. He plays in Miami. Now, through this point of the season, Andy Dalton's had 11 touchdown passes through 5 games. He's had 2 300-yard passing games. And Boyd's development at wide receiver has been huge. So you take his development to give him some extra weapons there, the improved offensive line, new offensive coordinator, all those things this year. We predicted there'd be an improvement. I think the offense has taken a step forward. And you couple that with the fact that since his defense is bad, they give a lot of points to opposing defenses. So that's a nice play. One that you might be tempted to look at out there is Dak Prescott. 62% available in leagues. He's at Houston. Now, he showed improvement today, and he's playing a Houston defense that's been destroyed by every quarterback that's faced him except for Blaine Gabbert. Well, that's Blaine Gabbert, so that's expected. But I look at Dak Prescott, as tempting as that might be, and I like Dak Prescott. I think he's got talent. I think he's got skills. I think he's a poised quarterback in the right situation. There's just not enough weapons around. There's not a consistency there yet. I just don't trust him. I would encourage you to look elsewhere. If you got to play Dak Prescott, not a bad play if you're desperate. But once again, I just don't think there's a consistency to trust him just yet. Another guy out there, and this is a guy I think you need to seriously take a look at, and that's Derek Carr. Derek Carr is 64% available. He plays the Chargers. Now, a lot of people, a lot of experts going into this year thought the Chargers defense was going to be top 5. I felt like the Chargers were going to be a solid defense. That defense has taken a major step back. Going into this week, they're not going to have Joey Bosa back, but even if he did come back, and he's not going to, there's a lot of things wrong with that defense right now beyond simply Joey Bosa being out. Now, Derek Carr has been averaging 343 passing yards per game. Now, consider once again this Chargers defense, what they've done. Okay, so here's the Chargers that face it: Beathard, Goff, Josh Allen, and Pat Mahomes. They're giving up an average of 22.93 fantasy points to each quarterback. Some of those names, you look at Josh Allen and Beathard, aren't big names. They're not very good. That defense bleeds passing yards and stats to quarterbacks. And then there's Marcus Mariota out there. He is 67% available at Buffalo. He had a nice rebound game today. Now, he's been struggling with an arm injury that's been limiting certain throws that he can't make. He played well today. Now, if you look at Buffalo, Buffalo has played terribly except for one game versus the Vikings. But even in that game, there was 2 strip sacks that put him in good position. They took advantage of those turnovers. But Josh Allen didn't have a particularly good game. So I expect that Titans defense, which is a little bit underrated, they've got a decent defense. They're going to have a lot of problems to Allen and the Bills. I don't see Marcus needing to throw the ball a lot. So he's a guy that I would probably stay away from there. So those are some quarterbacks you need to consider out there. Let's get to our running backs. So the first running back I want to talk about is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is about 30% available out there. Now, he plays Detroit. Detroit allows the 4th most points to running backs. We got a lot of hate for this last year. We got a lot of hate for it this preseason, even the last couple weeks. We said it time and time again. Jamal Williams is not a good back in the running game. He just simply isn't. He showed it again today. 11 carries, 27 yards, 2.5 yards per carry. When are we going to finally get through a thick skull that Jamal Williams is not the answer at running back there? Please, we gave you some sabermetrics, some analytics that really breaks it down further. If you want to see that, go to our preseason videos. We explain why. Just going in this year, we could tell you he wasn't the answer. The guy we said you need to keep your eye on is Aaron Jones. We said once he gets past the suspension, gets a few games in, he's going to become the lead back there. That's happening already. So Jones returns in week 1. He had 6 carries, 42 yards, pretty solid. Today he gets 11 carries, 65 yards, 6.28 yards per carry, and a touchdown. He also added 2 catches in the first 2 weeks. His role should and most likely will increase. He's been effective, by far more effective than Williams, who's been woefully bad and ineffective in the running game there. You got to pick up a guy named Aaron Jones. He's a nice running back 3 moving forward. In the right matchups, he can move into a running back 2 situation. And then there's TJ Yeldon. He's 51% available out there. This week he plays Kansas City. Kansas City allows the second most points to running backs. Leonard Fournette aggravated a hamstring injury. That looks like that's going to be an ongoing issue going forward. We've seen this before in running backs in the past. They try to come back early. They aggravate that hamstring injury. It nags him all year. I have a feeling that he's going to get shut down for 2 to 3 games while they just recoup that. So today Yeldon goes out. He has 18 carries, 52 yards, and he had 3 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. For the year, he's been very effective. For the year, he's got 3 touchdowns on the year. 3 times he had double-digit carries, and he's got 14 catches with 4.18 yards per carry. He's been very effective in that role, and he's a guy that you need to handcuff if you own Leonard Fournette. He's a nice stream in daily fantasy. He's a guy that you can definitely pick up. He's 51% available out there. Once again, we need to watch Leonard Fournette and see what the coaches say, but I'd be very surprised if he plays next week. Now, this guy's not widely available out there, but I think if he is, you need to get him. He's only 17% available, and that's Sony Michel. Next week, he's got Indianapolis, who give up the 7th most points to running backs. He's gotten better each week. His carries went from 10 to 14. Today, he had 25. His yards have increased from 35 to 50 to 112 and a touchdown today. Injuries to Jeremy Hill, who's on IR. Rex Burkett's on an IR. They're getting very thin at that running back position. He's going to be a huge play moving forward. He should be the lead back there. Now, James White's going to get a lot of looks in the backfield, but mostly in the passing game. And so I love Sony Michel. If he's around that, he's about 20% available in your leagues. If he's out there, you got to grab this guy. He's going to be legitimate, a running back 2 moving forward in almost every game. Another situation we need to look out there is Seattle. So today, Chris Carson, coming off a huge game, 100 yards, was injured, couldn't see the field. He sat. Mike Davis took over, who's, by the way, 99% available. Mike Davis goes out today, has 21 carries, 101 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That was a huge game. Chris Carson had looked good, but Mike Davis looked even better than Carson today. He looked explosive, although they played a defense that wasn't very good against the run. So you look at him last year filling in for Chris Carson when he was injured, and he had some very nice games last year. And so how do we make of this situation? Well, I think I'm getting concerned right now because I think when Carson returns, this could be your dreaded running back by committee. So here's what you would do with Mike Davis or Chris Carson. At this point, if Chris Carson comes back, I will probably wouldn't start either one of those because I have a feeling that they're both going to lose carries to each other. But if for some reason Chris Carson is not ready to go, then Mike Davis is the guy that you could pick up, and he would be a nice play. Another one to monitor out there in that same backfield is Rashad Penny. Now he's 55% available out there. He had a nice game today, 9 carries, 49 yards, at 5.4 yards per carry. He's a guy that they drafted this year. They've got high hopes for, but he's probably more of a guy that I would look at if I'm in a dynasty league, or maybe a guy near the end of the year, especially if Seattle's out of it. They might get a prolonged look at him a bit there. So he's a guy that is a nice grab. He's probably got a little more value in PPR leagues. I wouldn't probably pick him up right now, but add him to your watch list. A lot of you are on sites where you can have a watch list there, so I would add him to that watch list. Another one to pick up out there is James White, 24% available versus Indianapolis, as we previously mentioned, who give up the 7th most points to running backs. This guy is a PPR stud. They have so many weapons and running backs that are out right now. That just solidifies his role and his usage moving forward. In 4 games, he's had 22 catches, plus he's had 4 touchdowns. They've actually increased his carries also. So once again, 22 catches in 4 games, 4 touchdowns. They're increasing his carries with all the injuries they have. This guy's going to have a huge role moving forward. He's an automatic start in PPR leagues. When it comes to standards, that's a guy that you probably don't want to play unless you're absolutely desperate. In PPR leagues, you got to play him. Another one to keep an eye on out there is Ronald Jones, running back for Tampa Bay, who's 76% available. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Ronald Jones. He had a terrible preseason, got in the doghouse, was inactive the first 3 games. Now, what happened in the preseason, you look at Peyton Barber, was unstoppable in the preseason, but he's been very, very ineffective in the regular season. So today, Jones got a start. He was activated. And what he did during that, he had 10 carries, 29 yards, which is 2.9 yards per carry. That doesn't sound that good. This may seem hard to believe. That production is not great, but it's actually more productive than Peyton Barber had been in the regular season. So this is a guy that they drafted, they had high hopes on. They thought that maybe he could win that starting job. So they're going to give him an opportunity, carries to win that job. Don't go out this week and pick up Ronald Jones, but keep an eye on his progress. He could, in a game or two, become somebody there. If you're really, really desperate, he's a guy you'd stash on your bench and watch. Then you got Nick Chubb today. Nick Chubb goes out 3 carries, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's widely available out there. Obviously, this rookie is going to get more looks, more carries in that offense. But don't make the mistake that suddenly thinking that Nick Chubb is going to overtake Carlos Hyde there. Carlos Hyde's had a very solid year. Carlos Hyde's had 5 touchdowns in 4 games. He's averaged 21 carries per game there. So this is Carlos Hyde's backfield. I do see Nick Chubb getting some more carries, getting more involved in that offense, but we need to watch his progress before we think that he's going to go and take that role over there. But good game for the guy. Watch him. Another one that you need to watch, especially in PPR leagues, is Nyheim Hines, running back for the Colts. He's 87% available out there. This season he has 22 receptions for the year and 2 touchdowns. Today he goes out, he has 9 catches, 63 yards, and 2 TDs. None of the running backs for the Colts have really distinguished themselves or separated themselves. None of them look that good. In fact, to be honest, if you look at all the running backs in their production, probably the best complement to Andrew Luck's skill set is probably Hines. And so I think he's going to see an increased role in that offense there because he's got good hands out of the backfield and he adds a dimension and he helps Andrew Luck in that offense. So right now, if I had to pick a guy I would land on, it would be Hines in that backfield. It would only be in PPR leagues. Now we have to look, see Robert Turbin is coming back. He was suspended for 4 games for PD, we call it performance enhancing drugs. He got busted for, and so he will be back. We'll see what role he might have in that offense. But once again, Hines is the guy that I would probably watch there. Another one out there I think a lot of people have maybe given up on, has been dropped a lot, but I know there's a lot of discouragement with Royce Freeman, running back for Denver. He's 11% available out there, so for about 10% of you, he's available. He's playing the Jets this week. Now, he's had touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He's got value in standards and PPRs. I think he got less value because Lindsey is going to see more snaps and passing downs there. When it's all said and done, mark my words, okay? Freeman will out-carry Lindsey, who's a smaller back. So don't give up on this guy yet. He's a guy you definitely have out there, and he's going to have value in some leagues. And then there's Kerryon Johnson. I actually wish I had this guy in all my leagues. He's gone. I don't know why he's not gone in all the leagues out there. But Kerryon Johnson is 16% available in leagues. Next week he plays Green Bay. Now Green Bay this week shut out the Bills. Green Bay is not a good defense. Okay, I was going to say they're not a great, but they're not even a good defense. They're below average. Bills are bad. And so next week when they play in Green Bay, Detroit, that's going to be a very nice matchup. Don't be surprised if there's a lot of points scored in that game. And Kerryon Johnson is a legitimate 3-down back. He can run the ball well. He's got good hands out of the backfield. He can do it all. His yards per carry have been good. He had a touchdown today. A little concerned he only had 9 carries. I don't know why Lions didn't go to him more. They actually had an opportunity to win that game today. It just seemed like they didn't get him involved enough in that offense. But this is his backfield moving forward, so mark my words on that one. You got Philip Lindsay out there. Philip Lindsay is 17% available playing the Jets. He's a solid play in PPR leagues. If you're, let's say, in I would say a 12-team PPR league as a flex or a running back 2/3, depending upon your league size, he's out there. And then there's Frank Gore. I love this guy. He's 34 years old. This guy, unlike a lot of running backs, he's been able to stay productive past the age of 30. He's 92% available. He plays Cincinnati today, and last week he got more carries than Drake. But here's my honest assessment of the whole backfield. He's been more effective than Drake, but that doesn't say a whole lot. The entire Miami team has struggled to run the ball this year. And so, yeah, you could pick up Gore, but I think they're not quite done with Drake yet, but neither one of them have been productive. The guy that I'm going to start watching out there is Kalen Ballage, the running back that was drafted this year. He's 99% available. He got into some trouble in the preseason, not trouble necessarily outside of football, but just struggled with some blocking, struggled in pass protection, had a fumble, things like that, so kind of got in the coach's doghouse. But this is a guy that had high hopes on. He's a big physical back. He's like 230 pounds. And so I think that the Dolphins will give this guy an opportunity to get some carries to see if he can be productive, especially if Gore and Drake can't pick it up in that running game. So keep an eye on him. And so those are some guys that you need to consider out there for running backs. Let's get to our wide receivers. So our wide receivers, first one to look at is Taywan Taylor, wide receiver for the Titans, who is 97% available out there. We actually previewed him in the preseason as a sleeper. Now this week, the Titans released Rashad Matthews, and that leaves Taylor as pretty much the number 2 guy. It seems pretty clear he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver in that offense moving forward. So today he goes out and he gets 7 catches for 77 yards. He's seen an increase in targets each week, going from 1 to 4 to 5, and then today he had 9 targets. He's not a guy that you're going to start every week, but he's a very young, talented wide receiver who's a good stash on your bench. So Taiwan Taylor, wide receiver for the Titans. Another one out there, and this is a guy maybe a lot of you probably have heard, but Kiki Coty, I think you say his name is. So Kiki Coty, the wide receiver for Houston, 99% available out there. Will Fuller came out today. When he's on the field, he is so talented. Came out today, had another touchdown. That's 3 touchdowns in 3 weeks. That gives him, I can't remember last year, I think he had 6 touchdowns in 4 weeks. That gives him 9 touchdowns in like 7 games when him and Deshaun Watson have been on the field together. But he goes out today, re-aggravates that hamstring, so we don't know how long he's going to be out for. He didn't return to the game today. And so what we can see in that offense, whoever settles into that role as number 2 wide receiver, they produce for the Titans there. Or the Houston Texans, I should say. So look at Kiki here. He's a former 3rd-round pick out of Texas Tech. This was his season and actually career debut. This is the first time he saw the field because of an injury that he had. He goes out today. Once again, part of this was a combination of Will Fuller missing time because they've injured. But he goes out today. His 11 catches, 109 yards. He has a big game there. And so where's his value? Well, his value is directly tied to Will Fuller. If Will Fuller plays, I don't see a lot of value in this guy. But if Will Fuller sits, this guy's got huge wide receiver 3 potential immediately. So Kiki Coty, wide receiver for the Houston Texans out there. He's 99% available. Another one out there is not widely available, but we need to talk about is Corey Davis. He's 20% available out there. He blew up big today. He had 9 catches, 161 yards, and a touchdown. This former 1st-round pick has got a lot of skills. He's the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver in that offense. He's not just a guy that is going to be a temporary fix for you from here and there, the right matchup. He's a guy that has huge long-term value, especially in dynasty leagues. So if you happen to be in a league that's he's 20% available, go ahead and grab this guy. Another one out there is Geronimo Allison. He is 53% available, the wide receiver for the Packers. So Cobb was banged up. He sat this game. Now you add to the fact that he's injured. He had a poor performance last week where he fumbled, he dropped some passes, he missed a block. Right now it seems like this is a prime opportunity for Allison to creep into that number 2 role there. He's been very productive in limited targets. He's looked pretty good. In fact, in every game that he's played, he's had no less than 64 yards receiving. Today he goes for 6 catches for 80 yards. I think he could overtake Cobb at some point in the near future here. Now remember, Randall Cobb was actually being shopped around reportedly to other teams. So he was already a guy that the Packers would appear from the outside looking in weren't big on. So I think that Allison could move into that number 2 role. And if he does, number 2 for wide receiver, playing for the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, that could be a huge play moving forward. Then there's Tyler Boyd. We talked about him last week. Tyler Boyd's 28% available out there. This is a 3rd week in a row that he's been very good. His yardage totals 3 weeks in a row have been 91, 132, and today he had 100. During that same stretch, he's had 2 touchdowns. Plus, during that same stretch, he's had 31 targets and over 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues the last 3 weeks in a row. And so this is a guy, Tyler Boyd, that you got to take a look at out there for Cincinnati. He's very talented. The other one out there, not really big on, but I think if you're really desperate, Tyler Lockett, 25% available. He's had nice, consistent usage. Now, Baldwin was back today. Baldwin coming back lowers his ceiling, but he's going to be a solid matchup player during certain weeks. Or if Baldwin goes down again, I think there's a high likelihood that Baldwin does go down again. He's got a lot of leg injuries there that are going to be ongoing, that he himself will come out and say that he's not going to be 100% this year. So he's a guy that's good bench stash. Then there's Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills, 27% available. Not a great wide receiver, but we've been saying it all year, and I'm going to say it again. At the end of the year, of all the Dolphins wide receivers, he will lead the wide receivers in touchdowns and receiving yards. And so he's a guy that in most leagues is going to be what we call like a wide receiver 4. Not great, but a decent play. There's Keelan Cole, 33% available out there. After being quiet this week, he has a great Kansas City matchup. That should be a high-scoring game. There's Jamison Crowder if you're really desperate. He is 36% available. This has to be a deeper league play. I'm not real excited about this one. He's only had 4 targets per game, but he plays New Orleans, who'll give up the most points to wide receivers this week. That's Jamison Crowder, wide receiver for the Redskins. Then there's D.D. Westbrook out there, 83% available. Today he goes out, he has 9 catches, 130 yards. He's very talented. Now the concern I have about today's usage is he more than doubled his previous game's best targets. So today he had more targets than he has all year by twice as many. Obviously that he's probably not going to continue that. But the positive thing about him this week is he plays Kansas City. We know that Pat Mahomes in that offense is going to put points on the board most likely, and that's going to force them to have to throw the ball. Christian Kirk out there, been looking better, had a little bit quiet game today. He's 87% available, played San Francisco last week. His teammates actually compare him to Odell Beckham in terms of his talent, his skills, and what he's done. There's been some sites out there. In fact, one place out there called playerprofile.com actually compare him to Stephon Diggs. So this is a guy that's got a lot of talent. And now there will be some growing pains because one, he's a rookie, and Josh Rosen's a rookie. So from week to week, he will be inconsistent, but he's very talented. Another one out there, and this is a deeper one that I would probably not pick up, but I would watch, and that's Cameron Meredith. Last week, he goes out, he has 1 catch and a touchdown. Today, he has 3 catches, 32 yards. This is a guy that was signed for $5 million a year, brought over from Chicago. While he was in Chicago, he had 1 year there. He was really good, 888 yards receiving. That was only in 14 games. During that stretch, he had 3 games over 100 yards. Going into last year, he was going to be the number 1 wide receiver there. At least it appeared he was going to be towards ACL. Now, he came here, he got signed by New Orleans, took a while to recover from that surgery. It's been slow getting back into that shape, getting back in the role, getting back to full speed. But it looks like he's getting closer and closer to being 100%. If he does, he could become the number 2 guy there for Drew Brees in that offense, so keep an eye on him. Jordy Nelson is out there. He's 34% available. Another solid game after exploding last week where he had 6 catches, 173 yards, and a TD. He follows that up today with 5 catches, 40 yards, a TD, and a 2-point conversion, so you need to look at him. Now I want to talk about a couple guys out there. Aldridge Robinson for the Vikings had 2 touchdowns this week. He's not worth it considering. It was on 2 targets. That was nice. I'm glad for the Vikes. I was glad for him, but he's not a viable option. Another guy out there that had a good game today is Chester Rogers. He had a big day. Somebody needs to definitely rise to the surface and be a good wide receiver opposite T.Y. Hilton. I'm not convinced it's him yet, though, so we just need to watch him. A few more guys I'll give you. These are lower availability, guys that aren't widely available, but guys that are still out there in some leagues, so you keep your eyes out there. Now, last week we said the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 waiver claim should be Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is still out there in 15% of leagues. Next week they play Pittsburgh. That's allowing 27 points per game in the last 11 games. That defense has been brutal. He's had 6 touchdowns in 3 games. He is very good. If you're in one of those leagues where he's 15% available, you have to grab this guy. Another one out there that came out that's not widely available but is available out there in some leagues is Alshon Jeffrey, 15% available. Today he returns from an injury, gets 8 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Now next week he's got Minnesota, and he's got Xavier Rhodes. Now Xavier Rhodes struggled against the Rams, but I'm sure he'll have a recovery game. I'm sure he'll do better. He's a very solid corner there, so you got to take his value down a little bit. But Alshon Jeffrey's out there. Doug Baldwin is 15% available out there. Now he's going to play the rest of the year injured. He said he'd be about 80-85% of the rest of the season moving forward. But today he goes out there. He has 5 catches, 41 yards. It's clear that he's Wilson's favorite target. Now the concern next week, he's got the Rams. That Rams defense and that Rams team is good. So he's a good pickup. I'm not sure I'd play him next week. Julian Edelman is 16% available in leagues out there. He's going to come back from a suspension now, and he's a wide receiver that most of his value is in PPR leagues. Got Devin Funchess, 17% available out there. Now he's the Panthers' number 1 wide receiver, but he's not that great a receiver. He's not that exciting, but what he qualifies for is a solid play as kind of a wide receiver 3 in most weeks. Then you have Kenny Golladay, who's still out there in 17% of leagues. Kenny's very good. He plays Green Bay this week, so those are some guys that you want to consider out there at wide receiver. Let's look at some tight ends out there. So Eric Ebron, 20% available out there. He's got 3 T's for the year. Last 2 games, he's had 20 targets. Now, he's got value as long as Doyle is out. Now, Doyle's out today, so he had another decent game. But if Doyle's back there, I wouldn't start or play Eric Ebron. I think they're going to split the targets there. But monitor that. If Doyle's out, he's a good play. Another one out there, David Njoku. David Njoku is a guy that we talked about, other sites have talked about in the preseason. Got a lot of talent. Looked really good in the preseason. Then he struggled the first few weeks. I specifically think that was Tyrod Taylor. Last week, when Baker Mayfield came in the game, immediately David got 2 catches to look good. Today he goes out, has 5 catches, 52 yards, 24% available, like I said. So he's a guy that, with Baker at quarterback, we're going to see his value go up. He's a guy I like to play. You got Benjamin Watson out there, 40% available. And then Vance McDonald. So Vance McDonald, 57% available. He had another solid day today. He's had 5 targets per game in the 3 games that he's appeared. And so he's a solid play, but I'm not going to expect what he did last week. He's not going to get over 100 yards, but he's a guy that week in, week out might get you 4 or 5 catches, maybe 50, 55 yards there. And then another guy out there to keep an eye is Jeff Swaim, tight end for Dallas. He's widely available. We're seeing an increased role in there. He doesn't have a lot of reliable weapons. It looks like that he's becoming somebody that they're looking to. Got a touchdown in the red zone. They're looking at him more and almost had a second one. Just missed that, so keep an eye on him for Dallas. Some available defenses coming up. There's some good matchups out there if defenses are widely available or fairly available out there. One is Denver. Denver's 37% available. This week they get the Jets. So you look at that Sam Darnold week 1 looked good. Ever since then he hasn't looked good at all. Now he's going to see that Denver front seven. That should be an ugly game for him there. You got the Ravens. Ravens played well tonight. They struggled in the first half. Ben Roethlisberger moved the ball quite a bit, but they came out second half, made adjustments. They look good. That defense is quality. Plus, they got Mosley back. That's a huge bonus for their linebacking core there. And so next week they play Cleveland, and the Ravens are 32% available. Another one out there is Carolina Panthers. 63% available at the Giants. That Giants offense just is not, for the weapons that they have, they should be doing so much more there. You have Tennessee. This is the one that's probably of all the defenses that's widely available, that you can play, that you should play this week. This is it. The Tennessee Titans are 86% available against the Buffalo Bills. Should be a great play out there. And then the final one is Arizona versus San Francisco. Arizona 86% available. It's not a great play, but if you're really desperate out there, it's a fair play. Some things to think about long term. Hopefully you're not starting off 0-4. Hopefully you're not out of your league yet, but some of you will. You'll get to the place where all of a sudden you're looking to have to begin to consider next year. And if you're in a dynasty league, waiver wire is a great way to build for next year. Don't just give up on it if you start 0-4, 1-5, things like that. There's players out there that you could pick up, and I think about Darius Geis, I think about Foreman, players like that that were injured this year, that are out for the year. Those are the guys that play, stash on your bench. A lot of other owners that are in contention look past them, and so just some long-term options out there is begin to think about where you're at. If you're in a dynasty league, if you're out of contention, begin to build for next season. It's a great way to turn your team around. So those are the names that we think you should consider for next week. If you have any questions, feel free to put them on the bottom. We would love to answer that. Thanks for joining us today again. God bless. Bye.